Those who have been in a coma, what was it like? When I was in 5th grade I fell out of a tree and banged my head pretty well. I woke up 3 days later in the hospital. For me, the experience is easily summarized in 3 parts. When I fell, I blacked out before I hit the ground, or at least that is where memory fades. And fades is really the best word. It was as if my consciousness was drained away, and then blackness and nothingness. It was as if my body knew how badly it was going to hurt, and so it shut down. I have very vague memories while in the coma of hearing my dad reading a book, or my mom telling me that she knew I would pull through, or of a tube in my nose. But these were always super fuzzy moments and I never was conscious during them. It was more like a half second of being aware of one particular thing, the way the tube felt, being taped against my arm, and wishing I could reach out and move it, and then back into the nothingness. I think that I was somewhat aware of the fact that I was a little more aware each time that this happened, but honestly I'm not certain of even that much. Waking up was sudden. So sudden. I was in blackness. Had a moment of awareness, like my neck hurts, and then the pain was magnitudes higher. No longer a distant perception but something that I was actively conscious of. Waking up was the most painful moment of my life and I just started crying, and then couldn't even cry, it hurt so bad. I think that had more to do with injuries sustained to my neck and head than the coma, but that is what it was like. After an hour my body was used to the pain, and I was totally normal, albeit very weak, hungry, and thirsty. I survived and am fine now without any lasting issues. I didn't have anything near as traumatic, but I did have a moment when I was a kid on a swing that was going out of control, so I tried to stop myself with my foot against the tree. I still don't remember ever hitting the tree, just the moments when I thought what I was doing would help, a big black scene missing, and then waking up on the ground holding my foot as it bled everywhere. I can only compare it to when you're little and wake up at a friend's house and don't know where you are. I was in a coma for 2 months after a bad car accident. It wasn't medically induced, it was thanks to brain damage. When I woke up I was alone in the hospital room and had no clue what happened or why I was there. I had a neck brace on due to a broken neck, so I figured something was wrong with my neck, but was unsure how or what happened. For some reason I thought I was 60 years old. I was in my 20s. I was paranoid and scared, but didn't know why I was there. I used context clues to figure out I was in the hospital. It was frightening. After about 5 minutes I decided to go back to sleep. 2 months of sleep wasn't quite long enough. I had meningitis when I was 12, which got misdiagnosed for stomach flu and ended up with me being taken to the hospital last minute. The last memory I had was falling asleep watching the emergency news on the Brussels airport attack. I later on had a sort of fever dream, which ended up to be true, about my parents driving me to TGER saying it's okay over and over again. I couldn't move or talk, so it seemed more like a dream than something that was actually happening. I saw the lights of the parking lot which made me close my eyes, and after that it was like taking a nap. I had no awareness of time at all. It's like going to sleep and just waking up what feels like a second later, but it's actually morning already. I woke up 6 days later, highly drugged, but only gained consciousness the day after. My first memory after waking up is opening my laptop in the hospital bed to play Minecraft. I have no idea what happened or what I said when I woke up before that. In 2016 I was in a coma from March 31st to May 5th, then half awake for another month after that. It was like the longest, scariest dream of my life. I was medically induced by a fentanyl drip for about a week at first, and let me tell you, fentanyl is a demon. Wacky dreams about fighting corrupt hospital officials, so my brain knew where I was. They didn't think I'd ever talk or walk again, but in the hospital bed I laughed at an episode of that 70s show, and inclined every day after, putting me at about 85% health overall these days. But pretty much an average guy. Oh, it was a head injury. Had a seizure in the bathroom that made me fall onto the sink. I wasn't in one for long, just under a week. While I was in the coma, I didn't remember a thing. When I came out of it, I just remember hearing my mom yell to the attending, "He's up." Then I woke up with a bunch of white coats in the room. I was super stiff and incredibly confused. Oddly enough, I kept having vivid dreams of myself in the coma after the fact. Still have them to this day. They're almost like an out-of-body experience, because I can see myself laying in the bed with people around me. This is so interesting to read everyone's experience. I'm an IQ nurse, and I work with patients in comas all the time. I talk to them, I'll let them know why I'm touching them, whether it be to give them medication, draw lab work, bathe them, clean them after an incontinent episode. I'll also reorient them to where, why, and how they're in that situation. I'll also tell them when their loved ones call to check on them. I would feel awful knowing someone I took care of had flashbacks of feeling violated during a coma. I do the same, although I'm a hospice nurse, so when they get to that stage they're not likely to wake up again. But I talk to them all, tell them exactly what we are going to do and why. I treat all patients with equal dignity, whether conscious, unconscious, or after they've died. I still talk to them after they've died in the same way I speak to them when they were alive. Edit. Oh wow, thank you so much everyone for the kind words and rewards. I did not expect anything at all. I don't see what I do as a job. It feels like it's what I was born to do. I honestly love my job, which sounds strange for working in a hospice, but all the staff there are like a family. We try and make the atmosphere there as positive and calm as possible. It's honestly an honor to spend such precious moments with people in the final stages of their life and their loved ones. It's something I definitely don't do for the money. It's a job that takes part of you to do. You give a little piece of yourself to everyone you care for, and I treat everyone with the care and dignity I would expect one of my own family members to have if they were in that situation. Thank you again everyone XX. I was in medically induced coma for about a week. The coma itself is not much to talk about. There is just a gap in your memory, even from before it happened. I don't even remember the accident that brought me there in the first place. Waking up from it is much different story though. Since I was fully dosed by painkillers and sedatives and whatnot, I was basically high as kite. And since the trauma I suffered was very serious, my brain constructed very stressful vivid nightmares I remember to this day. I was in a coma for 3 days following a serious cycling accident, medically induced. I woke up with zero recollection of why I was there or what was said while I was out. It is easily the scariest situation I've found myself in, but I can't say I remember it. I woke up to my mom and dad in the hospital with me, and my body in traction of some sort, and that was way scarier to me. I was in a very short coma, 6 days, after a brain hemorrhage. I recall nothing during the coma. I have a fuzzy understanding of my first week or two after waking up, having pieced it together by the stories I was told. And memories of the days leading up to it were temporarily wiped out, though they have since returned. This was over a decade ago, so take this with a grain of salt. My memory in general is imperfect at best. Edit. I should mention that my coma was induced so they could stabilize me and drain the blood via my skull. My favorite dream from the coma involved me floating over a huge grey-colored ocean, and I saw something rise up from the water that I can only describe as a dragon with scoliosis. It moved its head like it was smelling the air, and then turned and looked right at me. In another one, my favorite cousin had abandoned me and now lived in the ceiling above my hospital bed with my 2 best friends, Jason and Jason, who were also twins. They just moved a tile out of the way and would just stare at me from above. I was in one for like 2 weeks. I would not wish it on anyone. For me, I was in a long dream. I did realize I was asleep for a long time. I was still able to feel and hear, which was interpreted into my dream. Example, my hands were restrained, so I would not pull out any tubes, and my dream was that I was being held in a prison. My wife was in a coma for about a month. At first I didn't bring the kids up because of how she looked, but in the 3rd week her color was closer to normal and there was less stuff going on, as she was pretty stable compared to the first 2 weeks. In a ho, I had told the kids that while mom wasn't responsive, there was a chance could she hear us, so they should be as brave as they can and sound as happy as they can. I described to them everything I thought that might spook them, from the tubes and wires to things beeping randomly and ERs and nurses coming and going. They were awesome. Even in the initial shock at seeing her with a ventilator, they were vocally loving, hugged and patted, held her hand, etc. We sat in the room a while and just talked. At one point I asked the kids what their favorite vacation was. Instead of our Disney and Universal Studios trips, they both agreed it was the road trip we took from Vegas down to Arizona, driving all over and seeing all the incredible sights. We talked about rides and amusements in Vegas, then Hoover Dam, the Grand Canyon, the Painted Desert, cave dwellings, petrified forest, silly road stops, a cheap motel we stayed in Flagstaff. We laughed and cried, just a little. It was as nice as it could be. They kissed her goodbye saying see you soon. My wife heard it all, but in a hallucinatory way. She now has, to this day, near 10 years later, a vivid memory of a second Arizona vacation she went on with us. She even asked me early on after she woke up if we had gone on a vacation recently. Her mind went through every detail we talked about and even added on to it, as if it all actually happened, and the memories of it are as real as any. There was a kid named Martin Pistorius who fell into a coma for 12 years, but his mind woke up 2 years into it. However, he was unable to speak or move, and everyone believed he was a vegetable at best. This wasn't the case. His mind was fully there. For over a decade he was mistreated in facilities that played Barney repeats every single day for years without him being able to look away through mental torture. He was also physically and sexually abused on top of that. At one point he couldn't stop throwing up, so the nurses tube fed him his own vomit. His parents were unaware of all this and tried adapting the best they could. In some of the lowest moments he remembers his mother telling him she wishes he would just die, yet all he could feel was compassion for how she felt. Eventually someone who cared enough realized he was responsive enough and got him the help he needed, and now he has a wife and kids, talks like Stephen Hawking, and is a computer programmer. Really shows how you can still emerge from the deepest, darkest places of life. If anyone is wondering, it happened to him due to cryptococcal meningitis. Fungus covered his brain and spinal cord. The disease comes from soil with infected bird droppings being inhaled. One day he was just an innocent 12-year-old playing outside, only for his life to be changed because of simply breathing in some kicked up dirt. Glad he came out on top in the end. His TED Talk